It's the new year and the new governor's making more moves. Plus, what the heck will go on the next couple of weeks? The governor's not in, but the legislature will explain it all. It's Mitchell Talks, the News 9 Stations with Aaron Brilbeck. Did you have a good New Year?
I had a great New Year, man. You realize that you're old when you start dozing off watching TV at 10 o'clock at night.
Huh?
Get off my lawn!
I'm so sorry
Darn
about
kids.
that.
How about yours? You had a bit of a wreck.
Yeah, somebody totaled my car.
Yeah,
You know what's unpopular at my house? Me driving other people's cars. That's
Yeah.
what's unpopular around there.
when people say they got wrecked on New Year's, you really did.
Day after. But it's pretty close. I mean, Christmas time. I don't remember what it was. Anyway, insurance companies. They're so fun to work with. Speaking of insurance companies, we're insured. Get it? It's a different insurance.
I see what you're doing.
You know what I'm trying to do. The fact is that this is a weird time, isn't it? Because the current governor's there. The legislature's been sworn in. The new governor's making appointments. Who's in charge?
Right now, there's not a whole lot going on. Right now is kind of the grace period. It's the period just before they start the legislative session where people are getting to know each other. They're getting to know getting a feel for each other, getting to know where the bathrooms are, that kind of a thing. And then things will start getting ugly come February.
It's going to be that long?
It's going to be that long.
So when we taped your vote counts a little while ago, which runs Sunday morning at 7:50, I hope you're watching that. A lot of people are. It's really a great show. This week we had Colin Walkie. He mentioned Medicaid expansion 2 or 3 times during the taping of 6 minutes. I mean, that's a Democrat deal, isn't it? They're coming after it.
That's what they're coming after. Governor-elect Stitt has already said that he doesn't want expansion. I don't understand why. Personally, I think expansion is a great idea. It'll cost us $100 million. We get $900 million for doing it. We're seeing hospitals closing down in rural areas like crazy right now. Hospitals unable to pay their staffs. This might be a solution to it as long as it's written in such a way that there's a poison pill that's put in so that if the federal money disappears, so does the state money. But I don't see a problem with trying it. A lot of other states have tried it. Republican-controlled states like ours have tried it and seen successes. So why not give it a shot?
Okay, let me see if I've got this down.
All right, go ahead.
You have Medicaid expansion if you don't, and you can debate it as long as you don't call it Medicaid expansion. Is that what we're playing? I mean, that really, literally, that's what we're going to be doing. Because we've heard Eccles say, well, you know, if you define it as this, you define it as X, we're not for that. So there's got to be a lot of wiggle room here, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
The state needs that money, and you have different interest groups that are screaming, we'll take it under any circumstances. Other groups say you can't take it under any circumstances. Very few people are very straight up about what it means, or they don't understand.
Yeah, I think that's the more likely scenario.
All right, they probably don't understand. And you have this situation where that you've got to have some new money into these rural areas. Speaker gave an interview to Ben Felder this week, said we got to do practical solutions. Do you think that the rural area issue is going to be one the legislature wants to go to, and how about the governor-elect?
It's a big one. They're going to have to, is the reality of it. We can't keep on seeing these hospitals shutting down or these hospitals having emergencies where they simply can't pay their staffs and they can't properly treat folks who need treatment. So that's got to be tops on the list. I think also tops on the list we're going to see is some type of criminal justice reform. It's long overdue. As far as education, I think education really had its time last year.
Can I ask about criminal justice reform?
Absolutely.
How do you keep the smart on crime people really kind of in charge on this versus the soft on crime? And by the way, that there are people out there that don't want to have any corrections. I mean, I'm pretty close to that, right? And then you have some folks that probably would, if you had more prisons, would want to fill them up. New ones too, right?
Yeah.
So you got to get the extremes off of both ends to get something done, don't you?
Yeah, and the way that we need to do it is what Texas did, which is to take money that we would ordinarily spend on more prisons. Right now, Joe Albaugh, the corrections director, is asking for $800 million for 2 new prisons. The idea would be to take that money and instead use it for rehab, for psychological treatment, for treatment for folks who are nonviolent criminals who are now locked up, and our prisons filled with them.
When I was a lot younger and would write speeches for people occasionally, the greatest talk line or the greatest applause line in Oklahoma history, if you're running for office back 20, 30 years ago, was to end a speech by going, and if you'll elect me, I'll make sure that Roger Dale Stafford finally gets the death penalty. Okay, a mass murderer that all the old timers remember. We hear, though, in this terms of corrections and mental health, we hear this all the time. We need to do more of this, but it's been going on for so long. A lot of people look at this and go, it's never going to happen. The system's hard to access. If you were watching that series we just did with Jeff Dismuke from Mental Health, you know, it's hard to get into the system. It's really hard.
Yes.
Jeff Dismuke says the other day on one of our hot seat sessions that if you have insurance, it's a barrier to getting mental health coverage. And I stopped him. I was like, would you repeat that?
Did you misspeak? Yeah.
Yeah. No, he said having insurance can make it difficult to get into the system. That's whack.
Yeah.
Okay? So everybody gives that Roger Dale Stafford speech, yes, sir, we need more, but it never happens. Do you think that might change this go around?
You know, it's a very complicated issue because on one hand, we want to be tough on crime. If you're the victim of a crime, if somebody breaks into my house, does a whole lot of damage to my house, steals a bunch of my stuff, yes, I want them to go to jail for a little while. I want them to be penalized for it. If they have mental issues or if they have drug issues, I still want my pound of flesh. And I think most Oklahomans are the same way. They still want to have some type of justice above and beyond that person simply getting a slap on the wrist and being sent merrily on their way. So there's kind of a fine line here. I mean, where do you draw that line between justice and what's right and what's wrong? Now, that being said, we don't have mental health care here in Oklahoma like we should. And subsequently, we've got corrections officers who are being paid $13 per hour to basically serve as folks who are working with mental health patients. They should be mental health patients. They shouldn't be prisoners. And that's another problem.
Can I put you on the spot about the difference with the filter, the media coverage of these issues? Look, this is a very difficult issue to cover.
Yes, it is.
Okay? I mean, you did stories on this situation down at Pauls Valley, which is still up in the air, and I know some editors were like, well, that's a local story. Well, okay, Nimrod, it's not a local story. It's a massive, huge story that affects everybody in Oklahoma. So here comes the question to put you on the spot. How well equipped is the media to cover these stories? These are not just car wrecks, okay? These are very in-depth, hard details to get to. And my question is, how do you think we're equipped to cover these types of stories?
You hit it right on the head. It's a very difficult story to cover, and I've seen a lot of coverage of it in the media where it was oversimplified. It's a hospital closing down, and it's much bigger than that. It's a systemic problem. It's a problem not just throughout Oklahoma, but throughout the entire country right now in terms of hospitals, rural hospitals not being properly funded. So to just say it's a local hospital closing down, not really accurate.
Yeah, and you know who you are. I mean, come on, this is not a local story,
no.
But it's a complicated story. So accessing the mental health system, the definition of public health is changing, which includes corrections reform, justice reform, mental health, food insecurity, the foster care system. It's not just running down to the VD clinic, right? I mean, it's just what people think of. Guys like Gary Cox at the City County Health Department of changing the way this is thought of. But this is a big learning curve in terms of what we're facing. It's just like education. I mean, when you start figuring out when you start taking into account what equals outcomes, when it's more than just test scores, it might be the security of that person, that kid at night. Are they homeless? Are they fed? Is there domestic violence in the home? So
and it's more than just throwing money at the problem.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Now, this is where I'm pretty optimistic because this is a session that we're going into for the first time in a very long time where we've got extra money. We've got roughly $400 million extra money. So we're not going to be so focused on the budget and the budget problems, et cetera, et cetera. We can start focusing on some of these social issues that need to be addressed, including criminal justice reform, including properly treating people with mental health and substance abuse problems. So let's keep a really close eye on the legislature and see if that's what their focus is this year. That's where it should be.
There was a couple of interesting appointments by the new governor this week. Brent Kisling from Enid, who is one of the state's top business recruiters that works for that Enid group that recruits business, has been named the executive director of commerce. Now, let me just tell you, the times that I've interacted with Brent Kisling, interviewing him on this show, hot seat around some of these issues, this guy's a player. This is not a swamp sort of appointment. Okay. you have a lot of what I would call agents of change this governor is putting in there. Don't know if he's going to be in charge of tourism. You remember the hearings on the tourism? I mean, that was a dumpster fire. The same people are still there.
Yes.
Right? I don't think they should get comfortable with this governor and this person coming into commerce. But there's still a lot of issues that are coming out, a lot of appointments at the last minute that are influencing how this next governor is going to be doing business.
Yep. And by seeing who he's choosing, it kind of gives us a better handle, because we don't have a whole lot of background on Governor-elect Stitt. He's never put any policies in place. He's never been a politician before. So it's difficult to predict the way that he's going to act and react. By watching some of these appointments, it gives us a much better handle of what his priorities are.
You know, there seemed to be a general pool that Governor Fallon used. She had people she was appointing over, and they'd leave government and come back in. You just don't see many of the same names. And this is entirely, when this governor was saying he wants to make Oklahoma top 10 state in all these areas, there are lots of new faces. Is it going to be difficult to cover?
I don't think so. But also there are a lot of business faces, which tells me that he's going to be trying to run the state a lot more like a business, which should be interesting to see. We'll see how that plays out, because government is not business. Much as we'd like to say, geez, we want our government to be run like a business, government is not business. So it'll be interesting to see what his learning curve is too.
Hey, well, one of the great stories this week has been, for anybody to cover, has been what happened in Washington this week, where the new Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, is the former Speaker. She's the most powerful woman in government now. She's taken over as the Speaker. We have a 5th District Congresswoman, Kendra Horn, who went to Washington. Do you think we'll see a little more coverage in terms of what's happening in Washington with the big changes at the House, and with a Congresswoman who, quite frankly, there's about 8 million Republicans out there watching every move she makes?
Right. And let me ask you this then. Do you think that's going to hurt, and it's way premature, but is that going to hurt her re-election bid in 2 years? Kendra Horn voted for Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is probably not a very popular person in Oklahoma, but she knew where the power was going to be. And as a freshman legislator coming in, you're going to want to vote for the person that you know is going to be in power. You want to be on the good side of that person. Did she make the right call, or is she basically cutting her own throat in 2 years?
A lot of it depends on what happens with the guy at 1600 Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I mean, Nancy Pelosi could become a very popular person the way things are going right now. I don't know, it's crystal ball sort of thing, but there were a group of freshmen who didn't want Nancy Pelosi, but when it came right down to, you said cut your own throat, you can really quickly marginalize yourself if you don't vote for the person who's going to be the Speaker. Voting for Nancy Pelosi means a lot of support in 2 years. So if you have, and every Republican in the country is coming after Kendra Horn. Okay,
Yes.
there are more Republicans watching C-SPAN the other day than have ever happened in Oklahoma history. They're all watching to see what Kendra Horn's going to do, Congresswoman Horn rather. And so it seems to me that she made the practical decision. But there's going to be a lot of time between now and the next election in terms of votes impacting Oklahoma. So I think that she's probably made, for the moment, the right thing. But will it be a TV commercial? If Nancy Pelosi remains unpopular, and she will in Oklahoma, then get ready to see as much of Nancy's face as Congresswoman Horn.
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on what the Democrat agenda is in Washington. Is their focus going to be only impeach 45, or do they have other plans?
Tell me what's going to be the main story the next couple of weeks as this new administration approaches being sworn in.
Obviously money. Money is always the story. We've got more money than we ordinarily do. You mean statewide, obviously, right?
Yes, sir.
We've got more money than we ordinarily do. Everybody's got their hands out. So where's that money going to go? Will it go towards education? Will it go towards teacher pay increases? Will it go towards criminal justice reform? Again, the pie is only so big.
But the Medicaid thing is going to happen in terms of the debate.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. But will Stitt move on it?
Real quick question. Will there be more reporters covering the 2019 session than we're covering the 2018 session?
I think, honestly, at least from the broadcast side, I think everybody stepped up to the plate pretty well in the 2018 session. Did very well. So will there be more? Probably not. But will there be as much coverage? I think so.
A quick reminder, the first television reporter who went to the Capitol after, 20 years, the first station that had a reporter at the Capitol as a beat was you.
That's me.
So you think things are changing for the better, even though we're seeing some contraction in print, you still think there's going to be more coverage?
I think so. I think that since Channel 9 put somebody in there embedded full time throughout the legislature, I mean, I don't even come to the office anymore during the legislative session. Since that happened, I'm seeing 4, 5, and 25 all stepping up their games. And the radio stations too. Everybody's stepping up their games more.
That's good news.
It's great news.
That's not fake news, that's real news.
When they first approached me to do the Capitol, I was excited about it because that's exactly what I wanted to see. I wanted to see more competition. Competition is better. I want people running after me. I've told you this before. I went to a very tough high school in New York and learned very quickly you run a lot faster when somebody's chasing you. I'm better when somebody is right behind me. So that's the way that we cover government well.
All right, I'm behind you, buddy.
Thanks, man.
It's good to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, my friend.
And we'll see you again next week. Be sure and follow me, Scott Mitchell, on Twitter. We'll do this every week. It's Mitchell Talks, the News 9 Stations. See you next week.